It can be really tricky to mix different collections of pattern paper on one layout. So today I'm going to walk you through my thought process on mixing a few different packs to create a cohesive layout. Today's video is a collaboration with the creative design team, and we are celebrating Julie's 10,000 subscriber milestone. Congratulations, Julie. It's definitely well earned. She is super creative, and I had the pleasure of just spending a few days with her. And you know what? The more time I spend with her, the more I absolutely love her. She is super funny and creative and organized, and we just have the best time all together. These pictures are from the Japanese garden in the Bouchard Gardens on Vancouver Island, and this was a packed day, and this is just a few photos that we took that day. Now, part of celebrating Julie is also scrap lifting one of her layouts. Julie and I do create scrapbooking guides, and we kind of switch off. So I'll do 1 month, she'll do 1 month. So I have the pleasure of having all of her guides, and this is from one of her videos. I will link it down in the description. This is her Winter Meadow workshop. And I still haven't gotten to make these yet, just the way she designed them. And I really want to, because I definitely have winter photos to put on them, and they're gorgeous. But I thought I would remake this one in a Japanese garden sort of theme today. She's used the paper really smart, so she isn't actually using a ton. So let's go ahead and lay out the pieces and kind of figure out where all the photos are going. The one tip of mixing collections is to have some neutrals. Well, for today, I am going all neutrals. This one is the Woven Textures Designer Series paper from Stampin Up. And this one has some really good options that you could mix with all kinds of papers, because it's neutral colors and there's 3 of each pattern. I think it would look great for beach pages, really any kind of page you could work in this texture. I was thinking even this one would be fun on like an Easter layout, because it reminds me of an Easter basket. And we got some burlap. This one I'm saving because I want to use that on some beach pages for sure. And there's another pattern there. I think this one is the one I want to use for my layouts today. It's a very subtle kind of canvas texture or linen texture. So that's the one that I'm going to use for my bases. Often I will start with white, but I thought this might be a really good base that isn't white and just a little bit more interesting. Now, the other packs I've pulled are Nature's Sweetness. This one I've used quite a bit. It has a strong like botanical feel to it, which I thought would go really good with today's project. We got lots of different neutrals and lots of gold foiling. So this has been one of my favorite packs from Stampin' Up. It was one of the first things I bought last year, and I've definitely gotten my full use out of it. This one is a newer one as well. Both these two were just released at the beginning of March, and this one is the Botanical Textures DSP. I have a full workshop guide using this paper, and I really don't have that much left. I used a lot of it for that, but it's all in blacks and whites. I thought this pattern would look really good on these pages. Some of these are a little bit larger scale prints, and some are like this kind of distressed look, which I thought was really fun as well. So I am sticking with neutrals, which is an easy way to use multiple packs of paper. You really can't go wrong. But if you're working with colors, you can also go for monochromatic. So maybe you want to use shades of blue, shades of red, and mix them in from different packs. Or if you're working with something like Stampin' Up, where there's coordinating colors in different packs. So maybe you have one pack that has Old Olive and another pack also has Old Olive. Well, you could use those interchangeably and mix them together. I'm going to bring out my mats and set up my backgrounds and put out my photos, and then we can start trying some paper. These mats that I'm using are from Close to My Heart, so you can't get them anymore, but any kind of cutting mat that has a grid on it will help you kind of lay out your pages and get things lined up. So on the original design here, we have our landscape photos, and then we have a row of 3x3s. I'm going to actually do 3x4s on mine. So my measurements are going to change just a little bit. I'm not sure if I want that there, or maybe that one there. Let's see, I'm going to have to make some of these a little bit narrower to make it work, because on Julie, she had a 3x4 here, and then these were 3x3, but I want to use a 4x6 because I really like this photo, and I want it to kind of go like that. And then we have these two over here. So I'm going to look first for the paper that's going to go above and below my photos. I think this one is a little too white. This canvas texture makes it a little bit more kind of a creamy color. Then we have this large print. That could work. I don't really want to go for this kind of distressed all over pattern because in a little strip, I don't think it's going to look that great. We have the white version of that large print. And then we have another little like splatter print. We have the lines, still kind of too white for me. Okay, I do like that. I think that will help ground my photos. Yeah, I like the look of black. So this is going to go above and below as well as right here and kind of end capping these photos right there. Then I also need some sort of pattern paper that's going to go in little strips right here beside, as well as top and bottom right here. So I'm going to just start trying things from this pack. Might be nice to work in some gold. This one has a really fine gold grid. I think that's too small. I want something that has a little bit more impact. And I definitely want to stay away from the gray that's in this pack because I don't think it looks great next to the black. I want a little bit more contrast than that. I do have this one as well. These are kind of like very small little branches. So still staying in that kind of botanical feel. Yeah, I think I do like that one. A little bit of difference in scale as well. We got a smaller print, a little bit larger print. That's always something good to keep in mind. Now in Julie's, she has a mat that is colored cardstock that goes around her photos and over here around this focal photo. So looking at my photos, I have a little bit of blue from Julie's jacket. We have like a hot pink from Andrea's shirt, and then Jema's wearing sort of like a red or reddish pink, coral color maybe, and then the bridge is red. So red or pinks could be a good direction to go here. Japanese garden, I kind of think of red. I'm just gonna pop this gold here. I have a little scrap of that paper. And then let's try that out. This is real red cardstock from Stampin' Up. I really love their different reds that they have. I do like that. I think that's a great pop of color and just ties that bridge in. And I feel like the pink and the kind of reddish coral color isn't really competing too bad. I mean, I could also mix in some pink. I do have this pack as well. This is the Marbled Elegance, and it has pinks and reds in it. And I feel like that would actually go pretty well with these pages. Not that I'd want to use a ton of it, but I could even use it for like embellishments or something. There's a ton of like really pretty patterns in this pack. I did a Valentine's layout on my channel with it, and I really had fun working with it. So I'm not sure about that one. I got to think on that, but I think red is the way to go here. I'm going to go ahead and cut down this paper, and then we will just try laying everything out and see how it's looking. All right, here is where we are so far. I did go ahead and stick these down because I was really happy with how this was looking. The red mats are not stuck down yet because I'm not sure what I want to layer underneath as far as embellishments or flowers, anything like that. I do have one more piece that needs to go over here of this gold piece, but trying to lay that down without sticking this down, it just was not working. So I gave up on that. I'm gonna go ahead, figure this part out, and once this is stuck down, then I will go ahead and add the gold. So I was looking in the photos, and we have a lot of ferns and moss and things going on in these photos. So I thought maybe instead of doing flowers, I know it is like a flower garden, but since we're doing the Japanese part that is a lot of moss and ferns, I was thinking maybe bring in the wild ferns. I have the stamps as well as the dies in here. I really like that these dies, there's like a whole corner arrangement. And I think that could be really nice to layer around my corners and just create some embellishments like that. I also have fun options for stamping some ferns. So because my background is quite light, I could also stamp on here. That is an option as well. I think it's kind of funny that the texture piece that's in here, this little texture stamp, is the exact same texture of my background. Now, before I move on to that, I do want to map my photos. So I do have photo placeholders here, and I cut my photos just a little bit smaller, so I have 1/8 of an inch extra, and I was thinking I could just do white. Another option would be to put white right next to the photo. I usually like the white right next to the photo unless the photos are really light. And then I could do a layer of black, just also another thin layer, and bring in a little bit more black from the pattern paper. And I think that looks really good. I think I am happy with that. I've been doing a lot of double matting on my photos lately. I guess it's just having those two different colors seems to work with a lot of my photos, and it's not quite so much white when it's not just white and you have another color kind of balancing it out. So I think that really pops the main photos here, and I might as well go ahead and stick those down. I pulled in a couple of green cardstocks and I went ahead and cut out some of the ferns. So I have lemon lime twist and granny apple green. So I want to slide these under my mats or my photos just so that that thick band is hidden, and we'll just kind of play around and see what that's going to look like. Now, since I have two different ones to work with, two different colors of green. Now, since I have two colors of green to work with, I'm thinking put the darker green kind of in the background and then the lighter green in the foreground, kind of like a shadow and highlight sort of situation. Just continue this one under here. Then it looks like one solid piece. And then what if we tuck this one under here? Something like that. And then over on this page, put the dark one under the red layer, just like the other one. I love how this blends right in with the photo. The tones are actually very similar. And that's how I picked my colors, because I wanted it to match with the greens that are in there. There are some little bit darker greens as well, which I could bring in maybe with some stamping, but we'll see. You could also put these like right on the corner. You could have the green part visible, but I like it hidden. It's nice because it gives you somewhere to attach it. So I can put adhesive on there and then it will stick to the edge really nicely and I can get it super straight. So I was tempted to maybe add like one up here, but in Julie's, she has just 3 groupings and I'm going to stick to that for now. We'll see if we change it up. Now I did go ahead and stamp a couple ferns just on white to see how this would look if I would want to have these coming out of here, because I don't want to stamp them on cardstock and die cut them. There are coordinating dies. I'd rather stamp them right on the background. So I'm just going to trim these out so it's a little bit closer to the actual stamp. I do this quite a bit when I want to test out stamping, especially on the background where it's like there's no coming back from that. So we'll just see if this is a direction I want to go in, because once I do it, I'm kind of committed. But there's some really fun designs on the stamps. This swirly one is really cool. Of course, what I do in one area, I also want to do in others. So I would stamp some up here as well and over here. I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong. It's kind of just depending on how full I want this area to be. I am going to put my title right here. That's where Julie had hers. And I still need to decide what I want to do for a title. Okay, I decided I'm going to go for it. I'm going to use Garden Green because I think it'll be a better match for the greens that are in here. We'll just see how it goes. And if it was the wrong decision, well, then you can learn from my mistakes. All right, we're going to need to mask this off, I think, because I don't want this going on my paper. Now, before I go ahead and stamp that, I'm thinking I need to decide on my title because I don't want to accidentally stamp over where my title is going. So I need to kind of figure that out first. I went into my stash and looked for some title stamps. I have this one, it's from Close to My Heart, called Change of Scenery. And there's a couple different ones that I like in here. This view, some views are worth every step, and then also worth the pause. I was kind of looking for kind of like a calm, peaceful sort of title. I do like that Worth the Pause. So let's pull that out and have a look and see if that's going to work for me. Now I don't really like this line that's on the side. It has like a little X and a little circle. I'm thinking I might just cut that off because I think it's going to be a pain to try and mask it. I'm going to save it. I won't get rid of it. And you can easily piece photopolymer stamps back together. Just save your pieces and you can easily put them on the block all together. But this will make it easier for me. I don't have to try and work around that. Worth the Pause. I think that's going to work really good. I'm nervous to do this without using a stamp platform, so I think I'm going to bring in my stamp platform. Stamp platforms are great, especially when you are going to stamp right on your background. That way you can make sure that if something doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you can stamp it again. Just played with that for a minute to make sure that it's going straight. And I'll put it back in here and make sure my paper is snugged up right to the edge. And then I'm going to take my archival black. And if I don't get it perfectly inked, I can re-stamp it. So I'm not going to bother like doing a test stamp. I'm just going to ink it up and then we can do a second layer if needed. Okay, that extra layer of matting was in my way. So pretty good, but a little light. So let's do another layer. All right, there we go. We got a good transfer of ink there. Now I want to make sure I let that dry and not smudge over it because archival ink takes a little bit longer and I put a couple of different layers on there, so it's definitely going to need to dry. That gives me a better idea of where I could possibly stamp some ferns. I just don't know if I want to. I really like how this looks with that title on there. All right, I keep going back and forth on whether or not I want to stamp. I think I'm going to go back to Mossy Meadow because it's just a little more subtle. I could do second generation of the Garden Green, but I think the darker will kind of do both things that I want. It won't be too crazy, and I think it's going to work out for the best. So let's just move these out of the way. Let's mask this paper off so I don't get ink on it. If I hadn't stuck that down already, it would make this a little bit easier, but that's all right. I'm just going to have to make sure I push hard enough to try and get as close to the edge as I can. And I do have some smaller dies I can always fill in, I guess, if I need to. I don't want to rock it too much because with the cling, you can sometimes get transfer around those edges. So I'm trying to go straight down and straight up. Just makes getting right to the edge a little bit tricky. So hopefully I can cover any little gaps. All right, let's see if this was a big mistake. You just don't know until you go and do it. Okay, pretty good. It's funny how that worked out that it did cover most of that. I would have liked this to probably be over a little bit more, but it's hard when you're just stamping blind. This also could have been a little bit more on an angle. But I think overall I'm happy with that. Up here, I think I want to stamp this one kind of at this angle. Let's see, this is kind of curling the wrong way. Maybe something like that would look good. Oh, that's actually working out really well for covering up any little imperfections. Of course, placement will switch a little bit as I play with my photo mat and get it exactly where I want it. This one, I think I'm going to need to add little pieces in here. So there are some little individual dies. So I could add a couple of little like curly ferns in there like that, or even on the end. So I think I will do that to fill in any little bare spots. I have a little gap here that I want to fill in. So I cut one of these little vines from the set, or these little ferns, and I'm just going to pop it in right around here somewhere just to fill in that gap. Now I feel like my clusters need some sort of focal point, and I was thinking, do I want to add flowers? These greens are kind of like a nice layer, but I don't think they can stand just on their own. So we have our base layer here with our stamping, and then we have our die cut layer, and I was thinking, what should I put on top of that to kind of finish off my clusters? And then I thought, what about butterflies? So I have this sketched butterfly set. I don't really want to stamp them on white And I also don't want them to be too dark. I want these to add to the page, but I don't want them to like be, this really big focal point on it. I want the photos to be the star. So I think what I'm going to do is gold emboss them on vellum. And that way we have some more gold working into the page, but it's not going to be this really solid embellishment that takes all the focus. So I'm going to go ahead and get out some vellum and my embossing supplies, and then we can do that. Trying to use up some of my little scraps and things right now. So most of the butterflies that are in here all have matching dies, except for these little ones. And I know I want some of these, so I think I'm going to stamp those a couple of times and emboss them. The nice thing is you can stamp like a whole bunch all at once and then emboss them all at one time. I'm going to use my little anti-static pouch just to help the embossing powder not stick to absolutely everything. And then I have my Versamark ink here. I'm just going to ink those butterflies up. And then I have the Ranger Princess Gold embossing powder. Whatever gold embossing powder you have should work just fine. Embossing is such a classic technique. Probably most of you have those supplies in your stash. Now the key to this is letting your heat tool warm up all the way before you bring it to the vellum so it doesn't get super curled up. I am working with a heavier weight vellum that I got off of Amazon. I will link it down below. And it's a fairly thick vellum, and that's also why it's more opaque. If you have very thin vellum, it's going to be a little bit more see-through, but I think either will work just fine. I just really like using this thicker vellum. It stands up a little bit more to heat embossing, and it's also really nice to work with. You can emboss it with embossing folders, use it as a layer on your cards. I've been really happy with how sturdy it is. So I'm going to let my heat tool warm up and then melt this. Just heat it until it melts. You don't want to overheat it. You can scorch your paper. And then for the butterflies that have coordinating dies, you can die cut it. These ones are super simple just to hand cut out. They don't have too many little parts, and I am leaving a little bit of vellum around the outside just so that it matches the coordinating dies. Okay, I have a bunch of butterflies here ready to go. Isn't that gorgeous? I just think these are so pretty. I think I want to put the biggest one over here because this is my biggest cluster, and we'll kind of go down by size that way. And then I have a whole bunch of these little ones that I can kind of sprinkle around wherever. Maybe add like a little 3 set there. I had a little bit of gap between my ferns, so I was thinking maybe add one there. I wish one of these little sideway butterflies was facing the other way because then I would put it right there. Okay, now to put these onto my page, I think I'm just going to bend the wings up and curl them down a little bit. That's usually my go-to with butterflies, to give them some shape. Just kind of bend them up and then curl them down. This is just like a bamboo skewer. These really little ones, I think I'm just going to bend them upwards a little bit. They're going to get flattened out anyways. Once you go ahead and put this into your album, it's not going to stay like that. Then to stick them down, I'm just going to use a little bit of glue right on their bodies. This vellum is thick enough. I don't think we should really see it. All right, I think that is all I'm going to add other than adding some journaling. I don't have a ton to say, so I could either add a couple of lines here, I could even add it here or right above here. I can write right on top of this paper, so I'll probably just add some pencil lines. Could even tuck a little bit right in beside that cluster. But I feel like this is a little bare, so this is probably where I will add just a couple of lines. I was very tempted to add some sort of embellishment up there, but I just didn't find the right thing. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is, and I'll give you a close-up look. Love that gold foil paper and then the gold from the butterflies. I think that worked out really well. And then the contrast of the black on there too. Glad that I ended up adding the stamping in there. I think it really made those clusters bigger and more impactful. I decided to add my little butterfly beside my title and just kind of bring it into the cluster a little bit more. I hope you enjoyed this layout. Give me a thumbs up if you did. And you can check out the playlist here for the rest of the creative design team's collaboration videos. I believe there's even a few guests that will be joining. So make sure you come back and check out that playlist. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.